Oil up today on more fears about security of supply, Iran seizing a tanker. Our guest says, though, that crude is set to be range-bound for the next while. Downside, of course, is worries about too much supply and weaker demand, but there are threats to supply. We're joined by Trevor Woods, Chief Investment Officer and co-managing partner at Northern Trace. Thanks very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. How are you?
Very good. You don't see a huge swing in oil. I mean, for example, you don't see much prospect of it getting up towards $90, for example, in the near future.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously always that possibility in the energy space, particularly in the oil space, but that would largely be around maybe exogenous events, obviously the geopolitical risk, and you mentioned that in the introduction, but you're broadly looking at a reasonably balanced market for this year. Consensus demand growth, we do believe could surprise to the upside as it did last year. But when you have, 4 or 5 million barrels of OPEC plus spare capacity sitting there, being able to kind of manage that market, we do think upside's reasonably limited in most scenarios.
Let's get into a couple of misconceptions you think that are out there in the energy market, because you've got some interesting stuff for us. One narrative is that fossil fuel demand is dropping, but you say we got to a new, oil consumption record last summer, and the world is steadily burning more and more oil.
Yeah, I think that was one of the narratives that you heard certainly in Q4 of last year in the oil space, was that there was, market prices were falling due to a weakening demand scenario, but you really didn't see that, right? It was not OPEC plus supply growth and some other factors that pushed that. And so when you look at not only the oil market, but the fossil fuel markets, we hit record demand in oil last year. We've hit record natural gas burn globally. Your prior guest was talking about the expansion in LNG. Even coal, the most vilified of Western of products, especially in the West, has seen record coal demand.
That's amazing.
So though the fossil, the green push is very real and the CapEx spend is obviously expanding, you're still hitting record highs in virtually every fossil fuel commodity.
Another thing, you think we do need to move towards some kind of a global carbon price. Tell us what you mean.
Yeah, well, I think that, if you want to effectuate this energy change, right, move more to green, more to fossil fuels, lower carbon, obviously globally in the Paris Climate Agreement and others, you're not going to be able to do that with carbon prices where they are globally. And though we've seen a proliferation of pure cap and trade programs like the California carbon market or the EU ETS, there's not a unified body for that. And so making folks make the decision on whether to run on fossil fuels or wind and solar and others, a price on carbon will help not only finance those changes, but help push that progression forward. And so until we get there, you're simply going to continue to see record highs in fossil fuel demand, as we've been seeing each and every year.
Yeah, I guess you can't blame executives, boards of directors, if they're looking at an investment of tens of billions of dollars and they have no certainty on a carbon price. Yeah. You have a very interesting thought for us as well. We keep hearing about the energy transition. It's a cliche. But you think in some ways we're in more of an energy addition. And I think you're referring to renewables and maybe extra nuclear.
Yeah, I think that is, one of the larger misnomers or cliches that's thrown out there, the energy transition. And what we say is you've never seen an energy transition in human history. You've seen energy additions, right? You've seen gone from coal to oil, more natural gas, and obviously now renewables. But you can't take what we just discussed, where you have every major fossil fuel market in the world at record highs, as is wind and solar, and then you look at population growth, right, where you're kind of 2.8 billion people in 1955, roughly 8 billion today, and circa 10 billion people on Earth in 2050, and not assume that trend's going to accelerate. And obviously, wind and renewables tied into the power grids, that has its own challenges. But I think that the solar, wind, solar, green, electric vehicle, that is very real. That is happening. We can see it. Obviously, EVs have been a story of late, but you still need energy, right? And so we're going to continue to see that through the decades. And again, a carbon price would certainly help change some of those dynamics.